This session is about you and your municipal governments. As I mentioned in my speech, there are numerous current issues that hold all of our attention, and it should. But as members, you expect your association to also anticipate concerns, to look to the future. And that's actually a role that governments must play. Where do we need to be, and how do we get there? That is what this session is all about. The AMO board launched a project in 2015 which we have called What's Next Ontario. Its purpose is to look at our long-term financial sustainability. It is about imagining what our future might look like and what we might do about it. We've been doing background work and keeping you informed as we've progressed. We've written 2 significant reports, and we have engaged experts, held over 30 regional-based meetings and municipal officials from all the corners of our province. We have conducted a great deal of financial analysis and researched other jurisdictions. The goal is to consider in practical ways how municipal finance align with what we reasonably know today, what we will need tomorrow. These are the 2 reports I mentioned. Report 1, titled Fiscal Overview, is an exhaustive report about our shared history. If you are relatively new to municipal government, it is a must-read. As an old-timer, I read it as a reminder of where we have been and why. I feel I need to spend a few minutes looking back so that we might be all on the same page. 18 years ago, the provincial government of the day downloaded social assistance program costs on municipalities. A transfer of provincial assets to municipalities also took place at that time. This included more than 200 water treatment plants, over 5,000 kilometers of highways. How many of those roads came with bridges? And no doubt some of you are thinking of the extra policing that those kilometers brought. Then we were gifted roughly with 250,000 housing units, all in various states of disrepair. This and much more put a heavy strain on municipal budgets. What was the effect? It meant property taxes increases for some. For other municipalities, they limited the tax increase but had to scale back significantly on capital spending. 11 years ago, AMO launched its campaign to reverse the downloads. Some of you may remember the $3 million gap campaign. By late 2006, the provincial government agreed to roll up its sleeves and see what might be resolved. 18 months later, relations were modernized through the upload agreement known as the Provincial Municipal Fiscal and Service Delivery Review. In return for the upload valued this year at $1.6 billion, municipalities promised to try to make up for lost time by increasing investment in infrastructure. Did municipal governments deliver on that promise? Did we uphold our side of the deal? Absolutely. Municipal governments did. This is the point where you should feel some pride. From 2003 to 2008, municipal-owned source spending on infrastructure, including debt, averaged $4 billion a year. After the uploads, it averaged $6 billion per year. The investment peaked in 2009. That was the year of the stimulus spending. We made an $8 billion infusion, more jobs created in Ontario, and as a result, new and improved assets. The change has been a win for all. I know that the upload also included a decline in unconditional operating grants, the infamous Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. I don't want to pretend this hasn't been a big challenge for some of you. I'm keenly aware that the upload has affected different communities in different ways, just as the download didn't treat all the same either. There are 2 things I want you to remember about this history. First, it's an incredible example of what governments can achieve when municipal sector work together and stay focused on what we held in common and the goal. The AMO upload campaign that started in 2005 laid that groundwork, resulting in a 10-year phase-in upload. In '08, we set the groundwork for a 10-year agreement to face the future together. We are close to 2018. The second thing I would like you to remember, we did what we said we were going to do. Municipal governments have redirected upload dollars into infrastructure to help make up for a decade loss of infrastructure investment. And the province has also done what it said it would do. This is what should be celebrated about our shared history. But what about the future? This is where I'm going to turn this session over to Pat Vanini, our AMO Executive Director, and Matthew Wilson, our Senior Advisor. They will walk you through some present-day numbers and also some projections. And I'll be back up to wrap up this session. Pat, Matt?
Thanks, Gary. Staff are truly appreciative of your leadership and that of the board on this project and all the other work that we do for you. So thank you again. So as Gary said, where are municipal governments currently? He told you about the upload, but municipal governments still face some big challenges. Social housing wasn't uploaded. It is still the responsibility of municipal governments, whether you're an upper tier, some lower tiers, and the district social service administration boards in Northern Ontario. We still face a $1.5 billion repair backlog for that housing. And some help is on the way as a result of the recently signed federal-provincial housing agreement. As Gary mentioned, we've seen fire and police costs grow at 3 times the rate of inflation, and quite frankly, if there's 2 words that we hear weekly, if not more frequently, it's the 2 words interest arbitration, and I know they are words that will get more used while we're in Windsor. For the 5-year period between 2010 and 2014, if fire and police had received the same increase that other municipal unions did, it would have meant $485 million less in cost to municipal governments. Remember that number, because it's a lot of infrastructure. And to put it into context, it's more than 4 times the size of the current Ontario Community Investment Fund. It would build about 1,750 kilometers of road. That's a road from Windsor to Montreal and back. We can't reclaim this missed opportunity. These are just 2 examples that trigger some questions. First, what does municipal government's fiscal health look like going forward? Second, is there a way to get to municipal fiscal sustainability? And third, what is municipal fiscal sustainability? This is the definition your board adopted.
It is a financial system that can adequately cover operating costs, maintain in good repair existing assets, replaces assets where appropriate, funds future growth and service improvements, anticipates inflation and changes in standards and technologies, that is all financed over an appropriate period of time.
During the rest of the presentation, we're going to share quite a bit of data with you. So let me say a little bit about the data at the front end. First, it includes all 444 municipal governments, including the City of Toronto. We looked at a 10-year period from 2015 to 2025, and that's using the latest full year's data. I would say if there was ever a reason for your municipal staff to complete the municipal information return that we have to send annually to the province, this project alone demonstrated its value. Without it, none of this analysis would have been done as quickly and relatively easily. We have done quite a bit of trend analysis. We looked at other jurisdictions and the reports that they've issued. We benefited from the input of other municipal financial experts, and we've had number crunchers that checked and double-checked the numbers. So let's take a bit of time to understand how the municipal expenditure side has grown.
We know that municipal operating costs are growing at $1 billion each year. If councils keep doing what you have been doing and assuming no new mandates, what takes $40 billion a year to deliver services in 2015 will take $50 billion a year by 2025. That's just to keep municipalities delivering what they have been delivering. That projected growth is based on historical trend back to 2009, so it accounts for population change and inflation if past trends continue. That's just operating. Now let's add in our infrastructure needs to the chart behind me. The best number that we have is the provincial government estimate that if the infrastructure deficit is to be eliminated in 10 years, municipalities need to be spending $6 billion a year over current spending. That includes life cycle investment needs and growth. It keeps what we have in a state of good repair and provides for what we will need to spend on roads and bridges, to treat water and wastewater, manage stormwater, build transit, and dispose of solid waste. But wait, there's more. The government's estimate did not include social housing, libraries, arenas, and recreation facilities. We estimate those needs at $900 million annually based on accounting values and the existing social housing units in need of repair. I want to be clear though, these dollars do not build one new unit of social housing. So let's add all of the assets I just spoke about into the mix as well. Here we have our total estimated needs for the next 10 years. If that is the expenditure picture, let's look at how municipal governments can pay for it using their three main revenue sources: property taxes, user fees, and transfers from the senior governments. Let's start with property taxes. $20 billion a year was collected in 2015. Let's assume those revenues grow at the projected rate of inflation, 1.8%. That's a Ministry of Finance estimate. Now let's add in user fees. $9 billion was collected in 2015. Let's also assume these revenues grow with inflation at 1.8%. Now we're going to add in 2015 transfers from the provincial and federal governments. Let's also assume existing infrastructure commitments from election platforms are fulfilled in the next 4 years and that they will continue beyond that. As best we can, we've accounted for every single provincial and federal dollar. In simple terms, it amounts to the provincial and federal governments continuing to do what they have been doing and delivering what they said they would deliver into the future. And finally, we have other revenue to add into the mix: licenses, permits, fines, etc. We have not accounted for any additional Provincial Offences Act revenue in these projections. We'll keep these revenues flat. We simply don't have a clear idea of what they might look like in the future to offer any increases. Now let's compare the two. We're going to put the two charts that you just saw side by side. Here are the revenues that you just saw. Now here are the expenditures. We're short. The difference between the blue expenditure on the right and green revenue on the left is quite clear. But if you're sitting at the back of the room and you squint your eyes, it might not seem all that bad. But what I have to tell you is that there are a number of zeros behind all of these numbers. In other words, we're talking about billions of dollars. The difference is $3.6 billion on average annually. How did we calculate that? Again, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to 2015 as our base year. We've made a number of assumptions to get to that gap, and we'll review them. Property taxes and user fees, we're going to increase those by inflation, at least for the next 10 years. That produces, on average, an extra $2.9 billion in revenue each year. The provincial and federal governments, we're assuming that they're going to continue doing what they said they would do. The numbers include future growth in cost share programs beyond 2015 and infrastructure funding. And still, we're $3.6 billion short on average each year for the next 10 years. The analysis hasn't considered any new potential challenges that we might face in the future. We're just talking about how we are going to finance what we know we will need now, today. I do want to stop here to make a really important point. Any fluctuation in provincial or federal transfers, they will either up or down, will either help or hinder, contribute to or take away from the future of your communities and your hometowns. Municipalities have no control over the transfers from the senior governments, but we do have a voice, and we do have a voice that can say we want no unfunded mandates.
So from the meetings we've already held across the province, I know municipal governments that we've talked to are feeling this challenge and concern as well. And I think the Premier actually may have read my script, because what it is a difficult conversation that we really can't avoid about what will the future hold and how can we deal with it. We know what your local asset management plans tell you. We've heard a lot of people talk that they feel stuck between a rock and a hard spot going forward. We can't look at our needs, though, quite frankly, in isolation of the province. So here's some work, but we didn't do this analysis. We've relied on the province's own work. So earlier this month, the Ministry of Finance issued its first quarter report. Remember, its fiscal year is April to March. And it advised the public that it's on target to reduce its deficit this year to $4.3 billion, and as planned in the 2016 budget. And it confirms that it's on track to balance the budget by 2017-18, and is projecting to remain balanced into 18 and 19. So what are others saying? The Provincial Financial Accountability Officer, Stephen Leclerc, likewise has predicted a balanced budget by 2018, but he's also predicting it will be relatively short-lived. He's also predicting a return, though, to deficit by 2021 with an estimate of $1.7 billion. So the green bars on this chart are the financial officer's forecast. And I think it must be noted that the Ontario debt is forecast to rise by $54 billion over the next 5 years to $350 billion. So this is some of the information on the province's own fiscal reality. And clearly, it has an interest in its own sustainability. Many economists have done work around the fiscal reality. Don Drummond, the former chief economist at the TD Bank and who worked on federal budgets, he also chaired the Commission on the Reform of Ontario's Public Services. Here's a quote: "More fundamental reforms are needed for the municipal sector to be on a sustainable footing." And he's not the only one. Standard & Poor's, the credit rating agency, said, and I quote, "Municipalities have been limited in their ability to renew their infrastructure, roads, water, and wastewater due to the constraints on fee and property tax increases." Others have also taken positions and done some work on that. Bottom line saying property taxes no longer fit with what they now have to fund. So if we are limited to current revenue tools, what happens? What will municipal governments be coping with if there are absolutely no increases in transfers or no new sources of revenue?
As far as revenue goes, the alternative looks something like this. You've seen these slides from our previous reports. Property tax and user fees that could exceed 8% increases each year for 10 years. By the way, the next 10 years also includes 2 municipal elections. What does an increase like this mean for a typical homeowner? Let's remember that here in Ontario, we pay the highest property taxes in the country. How much higher is too high? Can families in all communities afford these increases? Can seniors? Can millennials? Can your kids? Is the property tax the best way to raise an additional $3.6 billion annually on top of inflationary increases? A homeowner currently paying $3,000 a year in property taxes would be paying almost $6,700 a year in 10 years' time if the property tax alone were to finance the future.
We're not here today to present a solution. That's part of our next steps. But we do want to talk about different approaches to managing the gap. And research has helped us identify more than 40 different ideas used in different jurisdictions in Canada and elsewhere. And we've grouped those ideas into 5 different buckets. Matt really likes the bucket concept, so we gave him this one.
Apparently I do like buckets, very much. Let's look at bucket number 1. What are some of the things that municipalities can do on their own? Ideas include raising property taxes above inflation, the broader use of user fees, and the sharing of services between municipalities. Let me talk about this last one for a moment. Earlier this year, the Township of North Huron and the Municipality of Morris Turnbury announced a formal agreement to share a number of services. They include 1 public works department, 1 building department, and 1 drainage department between 2 municipalities. The savings are the equivalent of a 5% increase in property taxes. This is just one example. There is a concurrent session tomorrow morning on user fees and tax levies, which will highlight some more innovations which your communities might want to explore. But for all the innovation in the world, those innovations will only get us so far.
So let me give you another example. Let's talk about user fees and water specifically. Households in the Northern Ontario town of Hornpayne pay a flat fee of over $1,600 for water service. And that's not full cost recovery. $1,600 a household, no wonder they're not at full cost recovery. And as a personal observation, I don't pay that amount for my water in the City of Toronto, and it is at full cost recovery. So think about what you pay. User fees, as Matt says, won't solve every financial challenge for all the services in municipal governments. And yes, there is a lot more that municipal governments can do on their own, but there are some limitations. So Matt, tell us about bucket 2.
Bucket number 2 includes things that the provincial government could do to assist municipalities, either provincial programs or legislative changes. This includes municipal advocacy efforts, which will be familiar to you: joint and several liability reform, inflationary OMPF increases, interest arbitration reform. Let me just spend a moment on joint and several liability. We heard troubling news this week about the future of municipal reciprocal insurer OMEX. It is suspending its underwriting operations. Quoting from their press release, the impact of joint and several liability on municipal claims settlements has made it difficult to offer sustainable pricing. Are we about to lose one of the only alternatives to the traditional insurance market? Is the municipal insurance industry sustainable? This is a very worrying sign. Even if we achieved every single one of these advocacy areas, and I've just named 3 of them, some of which have already been multi-year efforts, they do not add up to the total that we need, $3.6 billion annually.
But clearly these things will help, and we will at AMO continue to pursue them, because quite frankly, they're just good public policy. Matt, talk about bucket 4 and 5.
Bucket number 4, we have new revenues. In bucket 4, we're predominantly talking about new revenues that could be used at a local level, and these include the existing City of Toronto Act revenue tools. What are those revenue tools? They're the land transfer tax, parking tax, billboards, motor vehicle ownership, alcohol, tobacco, and entertainment. All municipalities should have the same authority, and councils can determine if these tools are the right fit locally. But we know they are not choices for all communities. In the final bucket, bucket number 5, we have ideas which will include what other jurisdictions have used to diversify their revenues. In Sweden, Germany, and Switzerland, for example, more than 80% of municipal tax revenues are from personal and corporate income taxes. In the United States, sales tax are levied by municipalities in 38 states. Various forms of provincial revenue sharing exist with municipalities in other Canadian provinces. There is no shortage of ideas, but let me be clear. Any changes must serve the entire municipal sector, from large to small, from growing, stable, or fiscally challenged municipalities. In one way or another, all communities face different versions of the same test, providing for the future.
I'm not too sure where Gary is. He's going to make the closing remarks, but chances are, oh,
He's
here he
right here.
comes. Thanks, Gary.
Well, thank you both, Pat and Matt. As you can see, the challenges are real. I hate to think of what the picture would look like if we still had all of those social programs on the property tax base. Any action to address the circumstances we will need to be evaluated against principles and impacts, and how any action contributes to the municipal fiscal sustainability. That work must and will include you. AMO will be coming to a community near you in the coming weeks, and we'll offer other ways for you to participate. And we'll give a bit of time to recover from the conference, but get ready for us to tap you certainly on the shoulders to talk about this information in smaller forums than this Coliseum. So what we'll be looking for, we want input from the membership on which road we should take. In essence, there are 3 choices to make. The current road, where we use the existing revenue tools we currently have. Today we have an appreciation for the challenges that the status quo road offers and what is unlikely to achieve. Or you may think a new road is in order, where we pursue additional sources of municipal revenue. As a broad member put it, it is a bigger and bolder approach. Or there may be the road that is somewhere in between. Let me take you back to where we started today. You come to this conference because of your commitment to your community, because you care about what's on the horizon, because there are issues which unite all municipal governments. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of them, and this is a big one. Now is the chance for us to talk amongst ourselves, to determine where we want to go together as municipal leaders. At the very least, we'll have a thorough discussion about fiscal issues. Whichever choice we make, this is an opportunity to own what's next, and for the future to take center stage. Thank you, and please join me again in thanking Pat Vanini and Matthew Wilson, along with all of our AMO staff and municipal officials that have worked on this particular project. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a coffee break, and the coffee break is sponsored by Infrastructure Ontario, and
It's up in the exhibit hall.
hopefully we'll see you back here around 3:30 to introduce our next speaker, and I think it'll be very interesting for you to be here to listen to Mr. Nick Nanos and on his polling. And 10:30.
10:30.
10:30, sorry, thank you. 10:30, that'd be a heck of a coffee break.